Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me for pricing, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. I respect every watch that I showcase on this channel, but I'm only emotionally invested in a handful of them. And I am emotionally invested in watches from Moritz Grossmann of Glashütte, Germany. These are beautiful, underrated watches that should be as esteemed and sought as anything from the likes of Kari Voutilainen or F.P. Journe. In many ways, Moritz Grossmann is a smaller, more soulful a Lange und Söhne with a higher level of customization, smaller production volumes, and more energy devoted to fine finish. How's that possible? I'm going to show you. The company was founded in its modern iteration. Of course, Grossmann is a historic name in East German watchmaking, but in its modern iteration, it was founded in 2008. In 2020, this watch was launched in 12 pieces to celebrate 12 years of the reborn manufacture. So this is the Moritz Grossmann Power Reserve 12th anniversary. 41 millimeters in hard black coated stainless steel. The watch measures 50.4 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip. It's 11.6 millimeters thick, and the spacing between the lugs is 20 millimeters. The timepiece is beautiful, but it's also punchy, as black is a stark look. On any wrist, it's going to pop. Now, it is broad. Being that it's just over 50 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip, I'm going to recommend this watch for a wrist of 15 centimeters circumference or larger. My wrist is 16. Here's the down the barrel shot. I have no problem with this, and I would happily wear it, but you can't go much smaller than my wrist. It is thin. I always love it when a brand claims a thickness and delivers. They claimed 11.6, they delivered 11.6, and I know because I measured it, it will easily slide underneath the cuff. Taking a look at the strap, you can see calfskin, black. It has a folded edge, a monotone stitch on the bottom, calfskin. You can see it's a Moritz Grossmann factory strap with absolutely no crimping. It's matched with a hard black coated stainless steel Grossmann branded pin buckle. And the case itself is all of high polish, but hard black coated with a DLC coating, so diamond-like carbon, very, very scratch resistant. And I found that not all coatings in the watch industry are equally durable, but when you have diamond-like carbon or ADLC, you get a very, very resilient surface that can shake off scratches, scuffs, small impacts, and this doesn't have a mark on it besides my fingerprints. The lugs are beautifully stepped out from the case band. Instead of following Lange down the notched lug route, they did something a little bit more beautiful with this lovely concave profile. You could see the sharp break between the lug and the case, but there's not a yawning gap. And then there's a very subtle expanding bevel that grows as the lug moves toward the case. And you can see how the lugs really wrap around the contour of the case. The case itself is polished, sloped, and has a minimal bezel, very minimal, abutting a boxed sapphire. A couple of things going on. First, we have a vintage-inspired unsigned crown. Unsigned crowns are very mid-20th century, and that was the effect here. We also have an unusual setting system where you actually stop the watch by pulling the crown out. That activates hacking seconds. The crown then springs right back into place. You set the watch to whatever time you wish to display, and then you press. Remember, the crown snaps back after you pull it out to hack the seconds, so it's flush right now, but we're still hacked. You press this button to re-engage the drivetrain. And the idea here is, once you've set the time, you don't want to have to push the crown back in and budge the hands, which invariably happens when you try to set the time on a conventional watch. You push the crown back in after setting it to the second, and the minute hand jumps 2 minutes, and then you've spoiled all your work. So here, watch the seconds hand, see how it's advancing? You pull that crown out, it stops everything. The crown returns to the flush position, and now I can set with super precision. There's hardly any dead angle. When I turn this crown, the hand jumps immediately. I can line it up right there and then resume timing without worrying about displacing the minute hand. Absolutely brilliant, and a patented innovation from the folks at Moritz Grossmann. Now, the dial of the watch may look like it's white on black print, but it's actually slightly off-white. There's a little bit of a creaminess to these numerals and all of the scales, so it's actually a much softer, more tasteful color palette than you might at first glance suspect. It's a warmer and more approachable look with the off-white. You can also see that the numerals themselves have a little bit of a serif to them, which I love. It's a distinctive and subtle font, but one that's well paired with the classical imagery of the watch. We have a matte black anti-reflective dial. We have a power reserve indicator. As you wind the watch, it slowly turns from red to creamy white. 42-hour manual wind power reserve. Moritz Grossmann is particularly proud of its hands. They're cut, finished, and filled in-house, and they are famously detailed, mirrored, rounded, and needle-like. Here, not only have they handcrafted these components, but they've filled them with a white material called high ceram, which is ceramic-based, and like an enamel dial, has enduring tarnish-free beauty. Flipping everything over, you can see that the movement is a work of art. That's the best way to describe it. Now, it's easy at first glance to overlook the subtlety of this caliber. The first thing I want you to note is that everything a Lange has, this has, but this has things a Lange does not have. First, let's talk about tech and spec. It beats away at a very pleasing and traditional 18,000 vibrations per hour. It has a 42-hour power reserve, pivots on 26 joules. It does have the hacking seconds function. It has a handmade Breguet-style overcoil hairspring, so in any physical position, it keeps outstanding time. And it's been adjusted in 5 positions, which is the high horology and chronometer standard. The movement is also 36.4 millimeters in diameter, meaning it's the size of a movement out of a pocket watch. Moritz Grossmann, being a true manufacturer, can build the movement specifically to fit the intended case, which is why this movement is wall-to-wall with no gap, no movement spacer, and no need for the like. It is beautifully sized. 30 meters water resistant, so standard dress watch style. You don't want to take this swimming. Now let's talk about some of the special features, and let's start with the balance cock. First, take a look at those screws. See how they're sort of violet brown? That's because if you are applying heat to blue steel, a very quick firing, that is, yank the screws, yank the steel out of the fire rapidly, a rapid, disciplined firing will give you that violet brown color, whereas you just fire them relentlessly, just leave them in all day, they'll turn blue. But getting this violet brown takes deft timing. Also, look at all of the pivot jewels. They're not synthetic rubies, they're clear sapphires. Take a look at the balance cock, freehand engraved exquisitely, and you'll note Moritz Grossmann's own micrometric screwed regulator for ultra-precise adjustment. Take a look over at the ratchet wheel that sits atop the barrel. Triple solarization. You'll also note that the screw heads on the train from the crown wheel core all the way over to the ratchet wheel. These screw heads have been black polished with chamfered slots and circumference. The chamfer of the slot and the outer circumference is so broad as to actually be visible on my camera. That is impressive. So we have both fired and polished screws. Everything that's polished here is finished with a diamond paste or on a zinc plate for a true mirrored finish. And you can see the click for the ratchet wheel likewise. Take a quick look at the teeth of these wheels. They have been micro-beveled. That is micro-beveling. There are plenty of Geneva Hallmark watches that don't even bother with this. At Grossmann, it's universal. This is caliber 100.2, and the elements you see here are as fine as their high complications like the tourbillon. You don't get as much complication, but you get the same standard of finishing. Now take a quick look at the engravings on the bridges. Note that they're all manual and freehand. None of this was engraved with a drill bit or a laser. No two are exactly alike. Now take a look at the breadth of the glasuta stripes. Do you see how broad they are? How they have a color gradient, dark to light as you move across? That takes a broad abrasive wheel and a slow approach. It's anything but universal in watch finish. Even Lange doesn't have stripes that broad and luminous. Take a look at the cock for the escape wheel. It too has been freehand engraved. And on the edge of every bridge, you could see mirrored anglage of the highest grade. Even the steel components have been mirror beveled on their flanks and satinated across their top. This is the real deal, finished by hand, not by a machine. Take a quick look. Jewels set in chaton made of solid gold, a nod to the way pocket watches were made in the traditional era of Moritz Grossmann, the watchmaker, not the brand. you could see that each one of these settings is made of solid gold. Again, a nod to the way things were done back in the pocket watch era when you couldn't press a jewel directly into a bridge. In the modern era, they're unnecessary but uniquely beautiful, and they do add a little bit of shock resistance. You'll also appreciate that we have German silver, a lovely pale version of German silver, almost like blonde hair. It's a nickel copper zinc alloy with the copper giving it this golden hue. There's more. Make no mistake, there's more. If you look carefully, it's not the easiest thing to see, but there's quite a bit of space between the 3/4 plate and the base plate. This is a pillar movement with the bridges actually separated from the base plate by stainless steel pillars like an old marine chronometer. It's a laborious, time-consuming way of building a movement today, and the only other companies I know of that are doing this are Ferdinand Berthoud, which is super expensive, and Karsten Freisdorf, who is a super low-volume independent who builds every watch as a tribute to marine chronometers. This has that same fabrication, and you'll note that Grossmann builds its own wheels, plates, hands, even balance. They make their own screwed balance. Take a look at that recessed bolt balance. They make that in-house. And if you get close enough, you could see that they also internally bevel the wheels of their drivetrain. See how the inner circumference and the spokes have been beveled? You will find that there are plenty of watches costing 6 figures that do not have that feature. I believe that Moritz Grossmann movements are among the finest finished in the business, and yes, I do believe they are better than Lange. When you're making fewer watches, you can do better. Grossmann, being a good neighbor and typically modest as Germans, they would not make this boast. That's fine, I'll do it for them. These are right up there with Lang & Heine as some of the finest finished watches out of Deutschland, and worldwide at that. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.